Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. There's no escaping AI this year, but I wanted to get someone on the show that is far beyond the buzzwords that surround that technology. And by using artificial intelligence to augment data science, a company called Ople can implement more accurate models that will result in better forecasting, proactive customer engagement, shortened sales cycles, and reduced churn, all while optimizing processes to contain that high cost of data science. Even more so, companies applying AI to data science are rapidly solving problems that could not have previously been solved to identify sales opportunities, and also locate hidden cost savings and even establish new business advantages. Ople works with these large and small data sets, detecting patterns and relationships to more accurately predict outcomes. Simply put, Ople gets better with every project and with every model that it constructs. Pedro Alves is the founder and CEO of Ople, but he is so much more than that too. I mean, Inc. magazine called him a data science savant. Wired magazine called him a top 10 scientific figure of the year. High praise indeed, but it's time to buckle up once again and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way back to the US so we can speak with Pedro about Ople, the B2B software that uses AI to maximise the value of data and also solve both simple and complex challenges. And their mission is ultimately to make AI easy, affordable and ubiquitous for businesses. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Pedro. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm a scientist. I've been one and wanted to be one since I was about 5 years old. And I have been doing AI and machine learning for about 16 years now. Started off in the fields of genomics and proteomics, and then moved on to healthcare, a little bit of insurance, sports science, fashion, video and text and image, social media. So I've been around and doing, this field or, experimenting with machine learning and AI in so many different industries. Although now that I'm, running a startup, I'm figuring out more and more that I'm doing more and more of asking for money. And that's almost more than half of my profession is asking people for money. I figure out I do a pretty decent job of it, but every CEO of every startup realizes that very quickly that you're always asking people for money. Speaking of which, do you have any right now?
Very smooth. So you've transitioned into that role perfectly. No problem. Do you miss your old life as the scientist there?
No, So, asking for money or sharing your vision with people or doing interviews and bringing people into the company, it's always talking to people. And I've always loved talking to people. So I really enjoy that, communicating, right, and sharing my vision. I still get to do plenty of science and, sitting down and chatting with everybody in the team and making sure that we're going the right way and answering technical questions every now and then. So I really like the mix of things that I do.
Well, you have mentioned there you're running a startup, a B2B software company that uses AI to maximise the value of data and actually aims to solve both simple and complex challenges. So can you help listeners visualise exactly what this startup does and how you intend to do all those things and what problems you're aiming to solve for your customers?
As I said before, right, I've done this field. I've been a data scientist in all these different industries. And I guess to answer your question, you said, what problem are you solving? I think it'd be helpful to first define the problem, right? Yeah. So as I did the job and grew into bigger roles and started running teams, part of that running teams was hiring the team and interviewing people. And I quickly realized that hiring data scientists was harder than actually doing data science, right? And as I also on the side did consulting both for small startups and also very large, Fortune 500 companies, I realized the difficulty that these companies also have. I joke around at every conference I go, but when I make the following joke, I actually get everybody in the conference smiling and nodding yes to me. And the joke is, look, when a big company decides to bring AI and they say, we're gonna be an AI company, we're gonna bring AI into X, whatever we do. It looks like this. It's 1 to 2 years of hiring a team, and then the next 2 years realizing you hired the wrong people and firing them, and then going back to hiring a team again. And so it's 3 to 4 years later, and you're starting to hire the team again. And everybody agrees, like it's absolutely true, because you have a lot of people that say they're data scientists and they're not, and the people at these companies that are interviewing for them are not fully technically prepared to vet these people out. So you have this problem. Now, you can easily say, well, this is a problem that, education will solve, right? Schools are going to solve this problem. And I don't believe that's the case, because I think where we are with AI today is the same as the early days of aviation. You have the Wright brothers, other people like them, but basically the Wright brothers, if you take them as an example, they were the guys that built the planes, they were the guys flying the planes, they were the pilots. It took a Wright brother to fly a plane. You can't build United Airlines or whatever airlines you're thinking of back then. You can't say, yeah, sure, we're going to train and hire 100,000 Wright brothers. Right? That's not possible. So right now, schools saying that they're going to start mass producing data scientists, when the definition of a data scientist right now is a unicorn. Right? My definition of a data scientist is a guy that is a mathematician, a statistician, a machine learning scientist, a software engineer, a good communicator, understands the business. That is not the kind of person you can mass produce.
Yeah.
So what happened to aviation? Right? The field of aviation advanced so that the requirements for becoming a pilot became more reasonable, and then you can have millions of pilots. And I think that's the problem we're solving, is everybody wants to do AI, everybody wants to do machine learning, but it's hard, and it takes a long time, and it's hard to even find people. And so if we advance the field so that the requirements for doing that job are lowered, then the whole goal that we have in mind is turning AI into something that's easy, cheap, and ubiquitous. In my mind, the car, the phone, the computer, the airplane, none of these things really impacted society until they became easy, cheap, ubiquitous. And right now, AI is not one of those three things. So we make software that uses AI to build AI. In essence, it's going to make the job much easier. The moment it becomes easier, more people can do it. The moment more people can do it, it will become cheaper. The moment it's easy and cheap, then every company can get it, and then it becomes ubiquitous, right? So I kind of rambled on for a while without really telling you what we're actually doing. but at a very high level, I think that's what we're doing. We're making AI easy, cheap, and ubiquitous, right? More specifically, what we're doing is we have software that we can put in the hands of a person that doesn't have to be a mathematician, statistician, machine learning scientist. He just has to understand how to set up a problem, understand how to think about what AI can do. So he does have to have some knowledge, right? But the level of expertise now is much more reduced. And with our software takes over so much of the process, meaning the feature engineering, the algorithm selection, the tuning of the model, hyperparameter optimization, productionizing of the model. And now you can have a person that can develop and deploy these models in these projects in days instead of months. So now you're a small company in the middle of the country. You normally can't hire the talent that is expensive and hard to find. You can now hire a guy that with Ople can do this job. And even if you had hired a great guy, he's going to give you 2 projects a year. And the idea is with Ople, he's going to give you 20 to 40 projects a year.
Now, to many people, when they hear the word artificial intelligence or AI, they automatically think it's just, it's another buzzword, or it's something like big data used to be. It's always on the horizon. But there's more and more real-world solutions now that are coming into the marketplace. So how do you think AI can actually be used to achieve both big and small wins in businesses right now?
Right now, if you look at any company, whether, there's going to be a large spectrum of their understanding of AI and machine learning. But I think no matter where you are in that spectrum, you're still going to have projects that fit into 3 buckets: the doable, possible, and impossible, right? So if you're a company that is not very savvy, right, you're going to have the doable are going to be projects that you've seen other companies in your same space do. So, for example, if you're an insurance company, there's a few projects that you can do, even if you don't know AI, right? Because you're an insurance company, it's all about managing risk. So why not predict all that risk, right? Build a model that predicts if the person's going to get into a car crash, or if the person's going to get sick, or how their health is going to progress. The things that they're already doing anyway with things that are, like old statistical methods, they can do that with AI. So those are in the doable. And maybe for a company that's not very savvy, for them to even do that doable list, they would have to hire a person or get Ople, but at least they know that that's in the doable bucket, right? The possible bucket are going to be the projects that are a little more out there, that it's like, okay, it's possible, but they're really hard. And maybe for that, we need to hire an expert, or, again, get a solution that helps us do it. And then those are projects that maybe not as well defined for them because they're not very savvy. And then there's the impossible, which would be a big win. And the impossible is going to be something that's, for example, looking at the pictures of car crashes after the car crash happens, if you're car insurance, right? And saying, based on this picture, I want to predict what's the claim amount, how much am I going to have to shell money to the customer? And for that, you need a computer vision expert, and it might be impossible for them because they know we can't find a computer vision expert that's willing to work on this. And that would be in the impossible bucket. So the question is, I think, when one AI becomes easy, cheap, ubiquitous, and with software like the one we offer, those are the big and small wins. It's being able to now attack all three of these buckets, right? The doable, the possible, and the impossible, because the software is allowing you to do so.
Excellent. And I've also been doing a bit of research on you guys, and some of the things that really stand out are quite exciting. So can you tell me how Ople is also helping to optimize the supply chain operations and logistics by identifying new efficiencies and new opportunities that essentially reduce costs too? Yeah,
so actually we did engage last year early on with a logistics company, and and some of this, it doesn't have to be a logistics company, but the logistics within any company, right? There's going to be things that they want to optimize. So, if you are, we actually did a trial with a bottling plant, and one of the things they wanted to do was understand how much material to order, the types of plastics that they order in order to make the bottles. Right. So if they're predicting better the demand for the product and how much to order of the different materials, then there's going to be less waste and more efficiencies, both time efficiencies, but also financial efficiencies. And as far as logistics go, right, then you're talking about resource allocation and whether it's shipping things. The one company I mentioned from last year was all about shipping things. I believe they were in Australia, and it was all about which carriers to use for shipping different things to different people, because they didn't have their own, delivery trucks and anything. They would use the ones that already exist. They were just the routers, but they wanted to more efficiently say, if it's a package of this size and it's going from here to here, do we use carrier A, B, C, or D? And if you use machine learning to choose that, right, you're going to save money, you're going to decrease time. Basically, everything is just going to run more smoothly.
Now, with Ople, you're also proactively engaging with customers that are likely to churn by detecting the behavioural patterns that correlate with the customer turnover. Can you tell me more about that as well?
Yeah, so there's actually two components. One, it's a little more traditional, right, which is predicting churn in general, just given a particular customer, what's the probability that they're going to churn given a predetermined amount of time. So you might build a model that predicts 30-day churn, 60-day churn, 90-day churn, etc. And that's more traditional. But one thing that we're starting to roll out, and this is part of the product that's still not made public, but is something that lets us understand not just, oh yeah, we're predicting that this guy's going to churn, but can we actually understand what is driving people to churn? And given similar cases of this type of customer that had this particular reason for churning, what strategies have we done, we, not Ople, but the customer speaking in their minds, what have they done before that helped decrease the probability of that churn? So it's a lot more than just, oh yeah, high probability of churn, you go figure out what to do about that. We think it's high probability of churn. and this is why it's churning, and this is probably the best thing you should do to avoid that churning from happening.
Now, there's so many big problems that tech can actually solve at the moment. That's something that really interests me. And one particular problem, of course, is fraud, and that's in multiple industries. So can you tell me how you're able to actually reduce and prevent fraud through early recognition of those human and technical patterns which precede the fraudulent activity?
Yeah, so fraud is super interesting. I worked with pharmaceutical fraud for pharmaceutical insurance in the past, and no matter the kind of fraud, you're going to run into two kinds of problems, right? It's a moving target. That's why it's so much more challenging, right? If you're predicting if a machine is going to break, right? Let's say you have sensors on a motor that's running in some factory, and it sends you signals from the motor, and you predict when it has some kind of pattern, vibration, etc. There's a high chance that it's going to just break down. It's the same. It's the same motor. It's the same signals. Next month, the following month, unless you change the motor and then you build a new model. But, if it's not that case, then it's the same thing. With fraud, it's a moving target because you're trying to predict fraud, but fraud is not a thing, right? Fraud can be done in so many different ways, including new ways, that your model will kind of get lost. And so you always have to have this balance of how well you predict and detect fraud that is already in existence, types of fraud that already exist, versus new types of fraud, because the more you detect fraud, the people that are being detected will, either smarten up and do new things, or they'll be caught, and the new ones that will emerge, right, survival of the fittest, are the ones that you're not catching. So there's this balance, and the balance ties very well with the different approaches to machine learning. You have supervised learning, and you have unsupervised learning. And supervised learning says, look at the data I've already seen and help detect more of that. So obviously that's going to help you detect fraud that already exists, right? So if you're pharmaceutical fraud, right, if I'm a pharmacist, I can have a friend of mine be part of the scheme, and he comes in and gets a prescription for, some drugs that are high value, and then after he leaves, I just get the drugs back from him as a pharmacist and then go sell it in the market. And then to detect that, obviously, you need to see some kind of pattern of this particular guy keeps going back to the same pharmacist, not just the same pharmacy, but always to the same pharmacist, and getting, narcotics all the time. So supervised learning can help you detect more of that when it happens again. Unsupervised learning is saying, I don't know how people are going to commit fraud, but I know what normal customer behavior looks like when they're buying drugs at a pharmacy. And so I want you to alert me anytime you think it's not normal. And so a lot of that not normal behavior might still be legal, but at least you're getting flagged when it's not normal. And that's the unsupervised side. And we have products that are working on both aspects of this thing and combining them, so that way you don't get heavily dependent on just detecting new types of fraud or old, which is usually where people tend to go. They tend to be heavier on one side or another, and we're working on having a nice combination of both approaches.
Now, unfortunately, there's many elements of the traditional media that love to scare audiences with tales of AI dystopia where machines and robots are ruling the earth. And I have to cringe every time I read those articles. But as a result, are you finding any resistance or fear around AI technology? And how do you ease any such questions and those inevitable questions that come your way?
Yeah, so it's not a joke when I say every single conference that I go to, somebody, at least one person in the audience, asks a question, a serious question, not as a joke, a serious question about Skynet, right? So, this question alone would be longer than the entire podcast. And so, there's different components of the question you ask. And I'm going to attack a smaller one and step aside from this one for the purposes of the interview size. I'll just put it out there that, if you're listening, Sarah Connor, just stay safe. But getting that out of the way, now jokes aside, I think we could talk about a more specific issue. Let's talk about fear of AI, not in that sense of Skynet, et cetera, but let's look at real examples, right? So here's what I think. I think that personally, I fear lesser AI more than I do better AI, right? So the less intelligent the AI is, the more afraid I am. And it sounds counterintuitive, but let me give you the perfect example, right? The way I define AI is you have intelligent behavior by humans, and AI is anything that's artificial that tries to mimic that behavior. It can be very small in scope, right? My best example for AI is paper towel dispenser in the bathroom, because if you ask a human being, hey, can you please give me a paper towel? You expect the intelligent behavior to be, they will give you a paper towel. If you ask a lobster for a paper towel, he will not give you a paper towel because he's not the way we define intelligent. A paper towel dispenser, you wave your hand under it and it spits out a paper towel, right? The waving action is how you're asking it for a paper towel, and it's actually giving you one. So in that very narrow scope, it is intelligent. It's mimicking that intelligent behavior of humans. It's not general intelligence, but it is a form of AI. So with that definition in mind, a bear trap is AI, right? The idea is, hey, we have bears that come here and we want to keep the bears out. You could put people out there and say, hey, if you see a bear, catch him, right? Or you could put down a bear trap, and the bear trap will do that same thing. It will mimic that behavior. Now, it's not very intelligent, because for it, a bear is anything that steps in it. And for it, trapping means chewing its leg up with blades. So that's dangerous. If you're a kid and you step on a bear trap, it will tear your leg apart. Now imagine if you had a bear trap with AI that was better, that actually sensed or looked to see, is this actually a bear? Is it a person? And if it's a person, I'm not going to spring the jaws, right? And maybe if it's a small bear, I'm going to use less force so that I'm not completely, destroying this bear's leg. I'm just applying enough force to keep it here till somebody can, transport the bear where it needs to go. That's a much safer bear trap, and it's much more intelligent. That's advanced AI, and that's safer, right? Do you trust more a car that can drive itself well, knowing that car has no idea what a human being is and what the value of human life is? I mean, we're trusting these cars to drive around. They just know that if I see this signal that translates to 10001110, I should turn left instead of turn right. It doesn't understand that we value human life more than a cardboard box. It doesn't know and understand the choices it's making. It makes me much more uncomfortable than if it actually knew what the importance of human life and the extent to which we go to protect it, right? So I'm actually more scared of machines out there that have lesser AI, because, a landmine, right? The same thing. Imagine if landmines actually were intelligent and we could just deactivate them, and then we wouldn't have these places in the world that still have landmines from 50 years ago blowing people off, right?
Some great points there, and beautifully made, but I hope you realise you've planted a few seeds there, and I just know I'm going to be dreaming about bears with chewed legs and lobsters serving me hand towels. I just know that's going to come back to haunt me. But
but I guess in general, I think education, right, and people understanding what it is and what it can do, I think is a big part of the equation, is the education, and also having people that are building these things understand the repercussions, so that they're not, scientists isolated in a lab that have no connection to where it's going to be applied, because that's when you really lose a bit of the impact and applicability in the world, and then you can end up with a situation where it wasn't really thought out how this is going to impact people. So.
No, I completely agree. I think, writers and media publications, they all need to be concentrating on educating people, not spreading fear. That's the secret. But moving away from fear, can you tell me more about how AI is actually going to shift human innovation right into overdrive over the next few years?
Yeah, so remember a few questions ago, you asked how we can solve big and small problems for businesses, and I talked about these three buckets, right? The doable, the possible, and the impossible. Right now, every company probably has a number that's single digits, right, of these three buckets, right? A company might have 3 projects that are doable for the next year or two, and 3 or 4 projects that are possible, and maybe 5 projects that they consider impossible. And where I think AI can really shift human innovation, like you said, into overdrive is the fact that AI is so expensive and hard to get. I think creates this like blinders, right, on a horse, where people are only seeing a subset of things that they can do with AI because it's so hard and difficult that they're not really letting their imaginations fly free. The moment it becomes easy, cheap, and ubiquitous, people really start to let their imaginations fly free. And so going back to those 3 buckets, I think for every 3 that you have in doable, you have 4 impossible in the possible bucket. And for that, you have probably 5 in the impossible bucket. And for those 10 that you have in those 3 buckets, there's probably 500 in a 4th bucket that I call the unimaginable bucket. But that unimaginable bucket will become imaginable the moment people start to realize how easy it is and let their imaginations free. That is where the shift is. And that's why I have a non-answer answer to every time somebody asks the question, in the next 5 to 10 years, what's the biggest, greatest things that AI will do? My answer is always, I don't know, and I don't think anybody does know, because we haven't even thought of it. Whatever we're thinking now is the same things we were thinking of what the computer could do 10 years into the computer, right? Back when we were still predicting, oh yeah, there's only going to be the need for 20 computers on the whole planet. Or, people saying, it's cute, but I don't really see any real military value to the airplane. That was an actual quote from a general. And see, that's when our imaginations were still completely constrained, and people said stupid things like that. I mean, not that they were stupid, it's just human nature. Once you're blinded, you just can't see. I'm excited to see in the next 5 to 10 years when those blinders come off and people actually start to see the possibilities. I can't predict what those things are going to be, but I just know whatever they are, they're going to be the things that really change humanity.
So what's your grand vision for Opel in the future, in the immediate future and beyond?
So it's allowing the unimaginable. I think that is what it is. It's humans are bad at predicting, but they're great at imagining. And I can't wait for Opel to open up the possibility for them to start imagining, right? Imagine if every human being on the planet had the access to the best doctors in the world or the best lawyers, and everybody had the best personal assistant and the best nurse to take care of them, right? With AI, if you're actually thinking about how it can start solving these problems, that's in essence what it would do, right? You could have the doctor, that's everybody's doctor because it's connected. So it has the experience of having seen every patient on the planet. It's as if every doctor on the planet had perfect communication with everybody else, right? Imagine how much better they would be. And now it's free because it's just software. And it can treat everybody and look at everybody and know everything there is about patterns on the planet and things that are spreading. And if you had a trip to some remote location and you come back here, a doctor here, wherever you are, might not know what's going on in that remote location. And if he did know, if he was a doctor from that location, he would know, oh yeah, there's this thing going around and you probably have that. And this AI doctor would know that because he's connected to everybody, right? So those are a few of the things that I see in this world of imagination. I think what I want Opel to provide is a world that's designed by people's imaginations, fueled by AI, and that AI is powered by Opel.
Fantastic. Well, a huge thank you for coming on today. Before I do let you go, could you remind the listeners of where they can find Opel online and also contact a member of your team if they have any questions or want to carry on the conversation or even send you money?
So Ople, spelled O-P-L-E, we have opel.ai is our website. And you can reach out to Henry at opel.ai if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Well, a huge thanks for coming on today. It's such a fantastic subject to talk about. And I love the phrase you used a few moments ago there. I can't wait for people to stop predicting and start imagining. And that was really opened my eyes up to a few things as well. So a big thank you for sharing your story today. Thank you.
Thank you. This was fun.
I love what Ople are trying to achieve here, and it's not about AI and a buzzword. It's about making artificial intelligence easy, affordable, and ubiquitous for businesses. And that's so important, that real-world adoption, especially when you throw it into real-world scenarios, such as identifying and engaging prospects to simplify that customer journey to sale, or optimising the supply chain operations and logistics by identifying new efficiencies and opportunities to reduce costs. And equally for other businesses, it's about proactively engaging customers that are likely to churn by detecting that behavioural pattern that correlate to the customer turnover. For me, it really opened up my eyes into the art of the possible where artificial intelligence is concerned. And this isn't something that could happen in 2 years or 3 years from now. It can happen right now. And businesses are adopting this right now. And you have to wonder, how many of these businesses are going to quickly turn the tables and get a competitive advantage over those that are ignoring that technology? Hey, this is just me sounding off. I want to hear your side of the conversation now. You've got your own thoughts and your own expertise in your own industry, and I want to hear about that. Or you could just send me pics of your holiday or where you listen to the show every day if you're on the number 79 bus or the High Line train. I'd love to see those. So, as always, email me techblogwriter@outlook.com or tweet me directly at Neil C. Hughes. Now, over here in the UK, there's a lot of people complaining about the hot weather already. I think it's about 30 degrees, 86 Fahrenheit. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm going to make myself one of them tanning shields like George Hamilton and get myself a nice mahogany colour. But everyone else just seems to be complaining that it's too hot. What's that all about? Anyway, I digress. It's time to apply the sunscreen, and you don't want to see that. So until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.